Welcome back, guys, once again. So in today's video, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be showing you guys how to properly install connecting rod bearings on your N54. I do have the motor out, and I'm going to be showing you guys the procedure with the motor already out. The same procedure will work if you're working in your car and your engine's still inside the car. Just I won't be covering the first part of it. So in one of the previous videos that I showed you guys, there was me going over the journals on the crankshaft and how to check them and making sure that you didn't have to get your crank up reground. And I finally got my bearings and I finally got my bolts, so I'm gonna be going ahead and show you guys the procedures to do that. Alright, you guys, so how I showed you guys on one of the previous videos, these are the rod bearings I'm gonna be using for my car. These are King bearings, and as one of the previous videos that I did, I actually showed you how I mic'd the crankshaft to see what size bearings I was gonna need and to see if I needed to reground the crankshaft or if it was still good. And after micing my crankshaft was fine. It was still within specs, so I went and got standard size bearings. So I guess you just want to see, that's if you're running standard size, these are going to be the part number. Let's see if it'll focus. There you guys go. So yeah, these are going to be the bearings I'm going to be using. I already went ahead and did cylinder 2 all the way up until cylinder 6. So the only cylinder I have left now is going to be cylinder 1, which is the one I'm going to be showing you guys how to do this procedure in. And also, there's a lot of background noise, sorry about that. They're doing some roofing on my neighbor's house. So one quick little tip, if you have the, when you have the oil pump off, the oil pump gear will like to catch onto here as you're trying to spin it, trying to get the crank in different positions. So one really helpful tip is going to be to get a zip tie and zip tie right in the middle and zip tie it onto here. Not too hard to where it doesn't spin, but just enough so if you're spinning the crankshaft, this gear won't jam onto the bottom of this guide. So first thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is, like always, I'm gonna go ahead and use a clean microfiber towel, and I'm gonna go ahead and wipe everything down. I will be plastic gauging my bearings to double check my clearances. I did that to all of them; they were all fine, but I still gotta do it on this one. So I'll show you guys the procedure on this one. So go ahead and clean it up as best as you can. And all besides from cleaning just the journal itself, I'm actually going to spin it. Now that I have the rest of them in there, I'm actually able to spin it. And another important thing to note is I do not have any of the camshafts on. So even if I spin it, doesn't matter. I don't have any valves I could hit onto. But if you're doing this with a camshaft still on, and you're doing one of the first ones, be really careful not to scratch the journals while you're spinning this. Or if it gets too hard, stop and double check everything. So I'm gonna go spin this so it's out of the way. And besides from that, I'm also be able to clean the bottom much better. At this point, what I like to use to be able to pull them up, I like to use an old set of bolts. So these are gonna be some old set. And I will be replacing these as well with the OEM bolts. So I like to screw one in so I can pull up on the connecting rod carefully with not to hit the journal. The point that I can also go ahead and clean down the surface, the connecting rod. So now it's going to be time to actually install the shell. And as you notice, I'm not sure if you can tell. Actually, I'll show you on the cap. On the cap, this tab will line up perfectly with this shell, but on the other shell, which is going to be this one right here, it will not. So these are, if you're starting the job and you think they're not going to fit or something, they look weird, make sure they will only go one way. So you have, in each package, you're going to have 2 of each. So you're going to have a bottom and a top shell, and they're not interchangeable. And another thing is, if you take this off and you don't mark them, you don't really have to mark which goes where. You have these numbers on, you have these letters right here. As you can see, this one says FQ. And besides from that, there are also crack end cap rods, so you can't really mix and match them to begin with. But these letters, they will also go to the corresponding side, and the letters will go on the exhaust side of the engine. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this down as well. Just once again using this microfiber towel. And what I'm gonna go ahead and do, I'm gonna go ahead and install that shell onto here. Always I grab it like this, put it onto there, hold this in, and then let's see, once again, get right at the edge and snap it into place. Then after that, you can move it a little bit, and then just make sure that it's nice and even. So I'm gonna put this to the side for now. And the other one I have to do now is obviously going to be over here on the other side of the connecting rod. So this was going to be a little more tough, but after a little bit playing around, you kind of have to hold the connecting rod up while you're pressing it in, but it'll eventually go in. All right, so there you go. I got it in. I'm not sure if you guys are able to tell that. Flashlight, bad angle, but you can see I have it down here. So so to do the plasticking procedure, first off, after you do it, you're gonna wipe down once again the actual bearing shell itself on both sides, and you will not be using any oil at all, as since what you're essentially looking for, you're trying to see what oil gap you have, or your clearance between the bearing shell and the actual journal is, where your oil will be at. So you do not want to use any oil while you're checking this. So it's going to be a dry installation. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and rotate the crankshaft the opposite way and push the connecting rod down a little bit more. Careful not to damage the crankshaft. And at this point, I'm going to use a bolt, one of the old OEM bolts again, thread it in a little bit. At that point, I can use it to pull up on it. Do this gently, and once it's fully flush, I'm gonna finish rotating it. Actually, I'm gonna push it down. You do not want to rotate on a dry surface. Once it's at the top, then I'm gonna pull it back up. So at that point, it's fully sitting flush, and I'm gonna get I have my cap, but before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and get some plastic gauge. Okay guys, so this is the plastic gauge I'm gonna be using. I'm using the green color. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do, just right about its size, go a little bit smaller. And what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it with everything, a little strip. I got some tiny little wire cutters that I got from Harbor Freight. So, and just like that. And I'm gonna put these to the side. And what I'm gonna go ahead and do, actually before I do that, I'm actually gonna go ahead and wipe my gloves off. And now at this point, this rag is dirty, so I'll be getting a new one for anything else. So I got this tiny little strip that I'm gonna go ahead and place right on top of the journal, at very top. Now I will have my cap, and I told you guys the numbers will go on the exhaust side. Actually, my bad, they will go on the intake side. So sorry about that. I just had my engine backwards and kind of confused me a little bit. So once it goes on there, for this to check in, I'm gonna use some OEM bolts, the original ones that came out of here. And since you want to use the new ones for your final installation, so these are some old bolts that I have. And what I'm gonna go ahead and do, I'm gonna go ahead and get some oil. So I got a little oil squirter that I like to use for quite a bit of different things. So I'm just gonna pour a lot of oil into this bolt, as whenever you're installing bolts like this, you want it to be lubricated. Like in the case, if you're doing ARP studs, ARP will supply you with, or ARP bolts, they will supply with their own lubricant. But in this case, since we're going with OEM bolts, all I will be using is just going to be some oil, which is with the specification book calls for. So just put a lot of oil in there. Okay, so this, and just gonna go ahead first by hand. And then the torque specs for this is going to be 20 Newton meters. So in 20, that's going to be your like your preset. And then after that, you will do 70 degrees, and then another round of 70 degrees. And no, you do not back them off after 70 degrees.